Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the March 13th Woodlands Water Agency Board of Trustees meeting. Don't believe your lying eyes. It's actually 6 o'clock, not 5 o'clock as we have on our clock here. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with our invocation and pledges of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen. If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer or additional reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance to the United States flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge allegiance to the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Good. We have Mr. Fred Letterman would like to address the board this evening. Good evening, Fred. Nice to see you.
So I'm with Mud 46. I've been a resident of the Woodlands for a little over 20 years. The purpose of my comments is I want to discuss Mud 46's and also my personal opinions on the Woodlands FY23 excess funds memo, which is page 41 through 44 in the package. And I'll let you turn to that. The context in which I'm addressing it is that your mission, the trustee mission, which you know well, is to manage our water with fiscal integrity, efficient business practices, other items, and community partnership. I have a concern about the excess fee utilization. The total is a little over $5 million. For Mud 46, it's $1,137,000. When I took a look at what those projects or those funds that would be going to, I had a concern. I believe that part of fiscal responsibility is that all organizations, when they do their budgets, they should be sacrosanct, frozen in concrete, the foundation for which you build your operating plans and activities for the whole full year. Obviously, things happen in between creating the budget and actually the practice of spending the budget. What was most concerning to me was that San Jacinto River Authority is a taxing entity, but does not have taxing authority. I look at the income generated through excess fees as the funds that belong to my constituents in Mud 46. And early in the budget process for Mud 46, Eric had a comment to me and to several other people in our board that we didn't have sufficient reserves. Well, that's true. A lot of the muds in the water agency here have got some financial issues. Ours, we didn't have adequate reserves. However, I did a cash flow analysis and forecast on Mud 46 for 2023, and I realized that there was going to be money left over. That money was going to fund, to a great degree, the shortfall that we had in our reserves for, that Eric had suggested. And I believe you said 9 to 12 months was your target. So we're at about 3. I guess Maureen can tell me that's about 3. Yeah. So that's where the $1 million was going. My concern was when I take a step back from that, these excess funds belong to the MUD constituents. And I hope when you consider what needs to be done with this money, that you consider that it does belong to your constituents and that the money should go back to the individual MUDs. When I take a look, and I did take a look at the information that was provided in the memo, I didn't want to bring up 3 inches of paper here because I never have the 3 minutes. But section 5.02A of the resolution creating the R&R fund, I actually pulled that off the government document records. And that section only refers to payment. It doesn't refer to utilization of funds. And from my perspective, the priority should be the individual MUD constituents. And this excess fee, in my opinion, can affect a lot of people in my district. For example, if I take a look at SFDUEs for MUD 46 divided into the 1.137 million, it comes out to about $140. For many of us, that's not a lot of money. But for some of the retired people, the people who are on welfare, and there are some in MUD 46, this could be 2, 3, even 4 months worth of water bills. That's significant to them. So when you have your deliberations, my concern is that you may not be aware of what's going on in MUD 46. I'm sure you're all aware of what's going on in your individual MUDs, but we take a lot of pride in our board of doing things for the constituents, as I'm sure all of you do. I'm just saying, keep that in the forefront, because these 5 projects should have been in the budget to begin with. There's one that could have been considered a, not a catastrophic, but a problem issue that needs to be resolved. And, we would take that up individually. But from my perspective, as presented in this memorandum, I would like you to reject this and return the money to the MUDs. Any questions, comments? Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. Forgive me, I forgot to do something very important, and that was take roll call. Do it right now. Alternate trustee Harry Alcott.
Here.
Metro MUD. Trustee Hartley McIntosh.
Here.
Trustee Neil Geener.
Here.
Trustee Kyle Mays.
Here.
Trustee Jan Price. Trustee Ted Stanley is not here. Trustee David Smith.
Here.
Trustee Hugh Connett is here. Trustee Bob Lux is here. And Trustee Paul Martin is here. Thank you very much. We now move to agenda item number 4. Update on Region H. Arthur, please.
Share that our next quarterly meeting is May 1st, and there'll be a lot to tackle as far as data and continue building a plan. So nothing further than my last report, but I can say May 1st is our first meeting in the second quarter.
Thank you very much, Arthur.
Appreciate you guys.
Okay, we're now moving to the consent agenda, pages 1 through 13 in our meeting packets.
Accept presented.
We have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second is Hugh Connett. Discussion on the matter? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Yes, sir. Abstain. Very good. One abstention. Okay. That moves us to agenda item 7. Consider an act on SJRA's Woodlands Division excess funds. Trustee Martin.
I'll speak on behalf of Ron Wilson, the chair of the audit committee, who's absent this meeting. But we met, the audit committee met, and the audit committee recommends approval of the excess funds as presented by the San Jacinto River Authority. Recommends approval as presented.
Very good. As it's a committee recommendation, it does not require a second, but it is open to discussion. Do we have discussion on this matter?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I want us to look at the first item under the choice of projects, the emergency reserve specific transfer of $471,272.64 is requested. So I've been trying to do some research into the use of emergency reserve, excuse me. If indeed there have been any draws over the years taken from that reserve, and how what was the funding condition over the years of that reserve?
Historically, that was set up to replace one well, and it was set up at $300,000, and it's now 2 million plus. Okay, and that's the cost to set up a new well, and all the pipes that are incumbent to it. And that's because we lost some wells along the way. And when I joined the JPA, now WWA, we had 6 wells. And that was pretty important that we had a reserve, because if one well went down, we were in trouble. Now that's the history of it.
Okay, thank you for the history lesson. Appreciate it. I don't go back that far. So having done some research into the amount of emergency reserve, I found that from 2019 until the current budget year, the emergency reserve was characterized as being fully funded. And I can quote from the emergency discussion of the emergency reserve in the current budget document. It says the emergency reserve is considered fully funded for FY 2023, and no contributions are budgeted in FY 2024.
Which budget are you reading? The SGRA budget or?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
They have the emergency reserve.
Yeah.
So
Multiple emergency reserves.
obviously,
of this one, where they're requesting
every
use of excess funds.
every time the cost of installing a new well goes up, they up that from $300,000 to what it is today. And we've never questioned that. But it's wonderful you're questioning it.
Well, the reason I'm raising the point is when you look at the risk management document, which is also in the 2024 budget documentation, what is the use of the emergency reserve? Clearly, well, failure of key water or wastewater system components, but there's also 2 other uses that are mentioned. A revenue sales shortfall is significant, and delayed payments from MUDs that's actually in the risk register there. Now, as far as I've been able to determine, the increase in, at least where it can be documented, the increase in the reserve fund has been due to interest income. And there does not appear, until this request has come in, that an increase based on the engineering construction cost index. So that has not been funded through all these years. Certainly, you can document that from 2019 to the current year. And now the question is it proper that a fortuitous circumstance in which more water was provided because it was a drought year, and based on the forecast, the 4 plus 5 million, whatever it was, became then excess funds and what to do with them. And I would like to request that SJRA every budget year have a look at their emergency reserve and determine what it should be, and not rely on a circumstance where an excess funds situation arises to add more, a greater balance to the emergency reserve. That's what I'm asking about.
The San Jacinto River Authority want to comment on that?
Katie, is it appropriate to have the SJRA participate in the
So that's, well, the question then is this an appropriate use of excess funds or not? And this is the question I've been wrestling with for some time. And unless this is part of normal budget process, renewed every year, or determined whether or not there should be additional funds added to emergency reserve, I'm not convinced that this is a good use of excess funds for this specific purpose. I'm not considering the other projects. That's something for the trustees to reflect on.
That's a good point.
Well, we do have a
Point.
motion on the floor, though.
There's no motion on it.
Yes, there is a motion on
There's
the
a
floor.
motion on the
The
floor.
motion on the floor was made by trustee Martin on behalf of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Yes, oh, okay, yes. And that was your comment on it.
Oh, that was the discussion.
Okay,
I've got some
good.
comments too, but.
And it's been seconded.
No.
Call the question.
Right, well, we have further discussion.
Yeah, so we discussed this in our MUD, and some of the things we chatted about. I think it's worth kind of sharing, getting our thoughts here is, I think the conversation went this way, is that we don't think we should refund dollars that are associated with discretionary projects. I mean, we should refund, dollars associated with discretionary projects. That was one of the key topics. The other one was around the easements, the temporary easements versus the permanent easements around the town center water lines. Long discussion around, do we need to pursue easements now or later? Why temporary versus permanent? If you do both, the feeling was we don't need temp easements right now. We don't even have a project essentially to replace those lines. So why are we doing that? That was this debate, and we came down on saying we should be returning as much money as we can, except for those things we actually have to pay for anyway, the non-discretionary ones. And why transfer money back if you're only going to move it forward again? Just the administrative hassle of moving money around if you're going to spend it anyway. That was kind of the caveat around. So don't want to return it all. I don't know if the motion is returning it all or nothing. If that's the motion,
The
then
motion was to,
return it all or nothing.
Spend it all.
carry as,
Keep it all
Yeah.
or return.
Yeah, and I called the question. And you got to take a vote on calling the question.
I can speak.
Why can't we talk?
well,
No, I called the question. The vote is, do we want to stop discussion and call the question? So the vote is all those in favor of calling a question.
in favor of calling a question.
Stopping debate and.
Stop debate and vote. I guess I'm the only one. So the motion failed.
Thank you.
Now you can comment.
We have a budget cycle. And we go through this budget cycle, and in it, there are a series of approved projects and not approved projects. So we have this event in which there's excess funding. We had the same event, 5 months ago with things in escrow. So we're building a habit here of having excess funds and then, dipping into the pot to pay for projects that should have been in the budget. I would wager most of these projects are in the budget and would have been funded under normal routine, and we're leaving the normal routine. And, in one in particular, I was reflecting on, my participation in the community, Highway 242. I remember when TxDOT came back 2 years ago and presented this project in the community. And I'm a little surprised that, the River Authority didn't pick up on that 2 years ago. Because I remember going to the high school and having 12 TxDOT engineers explain this project to us. So, there's an element here that, we have $5 million. And we have a budget process. And to me, we need to adhere to that budget process and return these funds. I'd also like, the issue I also have is that, the SRA seems to be less than forthcoming at times. We also probably sitting on $40 or $50 million in the GRP area. And they've been very elusive about the use of the funds and returning of those funds. And I'm concerned about that, $40 or $50 million. And what they say, it's, to me, I look at it as it's heads, they win, tails, we lose. You mean? So they say, well, we only do what we want you to do. But then with these $50 million sitting at GRP, it says, well, their board decides that, not us. Well, we have a culture in which we handle these issues too lightly. This is $5 million of the citizens of Woodlands' money. They worked hard to earn it. And I think we are kind of cavalier in the way we handle, especially $5 million. It's a lot of money. And I think some of these projects, obviously, number 2 with the asbestos cement type, I have my finger in that pot. But the other ones, I think, should follow the normal budget process. And it's never, how would you say, the comment I heard once was, it's too much trouble to give $5 million back. I don't know if that's, I would take that cavalier attitude. There's too much trouble to refund money that the citizens earn to pay these bills. And then I go back to, I think, we have this event, but I think the River Authority needs to address the issue of the $40 or $50 million that are sitting in GRP, in which we've been told that we don't have a say.
It's a bit off topic, Trustee.
Yeah, that's a different.
And
That's a
I
different
appreciate
issue, but-
your comments are very
I mean,
well thought out and
Yeah.
well presented, and we appreciate them.
Okay, so I have some comments from
Please,
being on the finance
Trustee Mays.
committee, as it relates to the different projects. If we're gonna have a reserve fund, the best time to top it off is when we've had a surplus like we have the last couple of years. And so 400,000 to top off the reserve fund seems reasonable. If you look at the AC water lines, as David mentioned, this is something that we have asked the SJRA to do on our behalf to conduct this condition assessment for $1.6 million. Obviously, it's got to be paid for. There's money available to pay for it, and so it's got to be done. The water line easements are for a project where the engineering work has already either been done or it's almost finished. And when we decide to start replacing AC water lines, that's probably going to be the very first one. The longer we wait to get easements, the more things that can get in the way of getting a clear easement. So it's probably better to get those easements now while we can than wait for more complications down the line. The grit classifier, I'm sure the SJRA can tell us why that's important to fix now, but I think that's pretty important that we have our wastewater treatment plants running properly. And then the TxDOT adjustment, whether they anticipate it or not, isn't the issue. We are required to make these adjustments by the state of Texas. And so the money's got to come from somewhere. So we can either take it out of this surplus or figure out a different way to fund it. That's why the audit committee voted to go ahead and support the resolution as it's proposed in this memo.
Thank you. I know that when this was presented by Chris Meeks at last month's meeting, was requested that we go back to our MUDs and get their voice, their input as to how the trustees should vote. I hope that you all did that. I certainly did. And I'm going to be casting my vote with the support of my board. So with that, I move that we call the question if there's no further discussion. All in favor? Yes, sir?
This is on the entire package.
Correct.
I'm just saying, so that you can't carve anything out of it, just the entire.
You can defeat the entire motion and then we can rebuild this issue, if you will. But the motion that's on the floor is as was submitted by the SGRA.
And reviewed and supported by the audit committee.
Correct. So, are we clear? Everybody got it? All in favor of approval of the motion as is stated and is currently on the floor? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, we have two opposed and two, excuse me, no abstentions. Motion passes.
How they voted, because I wanted to make sure I got the right names to the vote.
I can tell, the only two that voted for it were trustee Connett and excuse me, pardon me. The trustee Connett and trustee Smith, therefore,
Nobody called for a roll call vote. Nobody called for a roll call vote. You can get it, but it's not going to be in the minutes.
That's fine. I
Okay?
don't need it in the minutes because I need to present something
Yeah,
from my perspective,
yes.
and I just don't think this is right. This is
out of line. This is out of order, please. No, it's not your fault. It's, we can't bring non-trustees into our.
That's correct.
Parameters, attorney. Oh, everything, Katie? Yeah, is everything square from a legal perspective? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8, receive the regular monthly SJRA Woodlands Division report, including updates on operations, projects, and public outreach. Pages 24 through 43 of our meeting packets.
In your packet, nothing to report out of the ordinary as far as the MOR is concerned. If Aaron's going to do a presentation for you, if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer.
Jason, nice to see you. I I thought I was expecting someone other than you. Good evening.
So
So-
I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Is there any questions of Mr. Williams from that information? Mr. Schindewolf, it's all yours.
Page is that?
You have already. Yes, sir.
Okay.
For reserves, you do realize that.
Is this available anywhere electronically?
It will be, it's not current time.
Years ago.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yes. Sorry.
My credenza is full. I don't have any more room. Something has to go.
We're gonna get zapped here. Scoot around here.
Want me to start manually?
This is the network. Awesome.
Yes, this is one. Stuck. Plan update for this year, starting in 2025, going to 2034. I think it's about my 6th year of putting this project plan together and the updates that go into it. So I'll be presenting most possibly beyond or new projects that will be starting in 2025. And Connie will also be assisting me in a certain part of the presentation. Just a high level overview of the Wetlands Division assets. So we have roughly 8,000 total assets in our water and wastewater systems, totaling a overall replacement value of about $2 billion. Let's keep that in mind. But you can see all the different assets from the breakout.
So when you say assets, is that $2 billion broken down in any detail?
Not $2 billion. It is broken out in our enterprise asset management system. It's not any of the information that we've handed out to you right now, but I don't know, Connie, is that something we probably have? Yeah.
No, it's not in necessarily public available, but it's in our asset management system.
So I know the asset list, I've seen that document, but what, you had to break that down. You know, 2 billion, how much is wastewater, how much is water assets?
We don't have that number.
You don't have it in? Sorry.
It's good, smell good. When you flush your toilet or, take a shower, you want all the water to go away, no issues. So out of sight, out of mind. Now, we have award-winning facilities, limited to no service interruptions, and when they do happen, they're very short. And we want to get the residents back in service as soon as possible. We've had one boil water notice in the past 50 years. That was actually on the residential side of a sample site. It was due to the irrigation system. So it wasn't even in the system. It was just due to a sample site issue. But as we said before, we want to keep things out of sight, out of mind for the residents of the Woodlands. And there's actually a picture of a soldier against the backdrop, he's in camo. Like I said, out of sight, out of mind, working in the background.
Aaron, how do award-winning facilities enter into the picture? I'm confused by that. That's the first thing there.
Sure. So that's the expectation that we understand from the Woodland residents in the past, and we understand the future, that you want facilities that meet those high level requirements, that meet the TCQ permit requirements day in and day out for years on end, never have violations. And that's what actually leads to getting these awards. So it's having facilities that operate as they're supposed to without interruption and without violations.
Regulatory award.
Yes, sir.
Superior water, your mud.
No, I get the water.
And wastewater treatment.
I'm just,
And
it's
industry.
the award-winning piece that I don't know that residents care about winning awards, but I'm just also kind of curious about how you.
That's a good question, understanding why it applies.
You would know of the award, or I don't know that they would care about an award. They want the good water, sure.
Well, such awards as having known this, the best recognized wastewater facility in the state and in certain categories. So those are things that we believe that the Woodlands residents would be, proud of knowing, that just like having the community, the best community in the United States, things of that nature.
And can you provide a list of those awards?
I think we probably could, yeah. And the AWWA, we, the Water Value
Yeah,
Association, some of the industry awards that we've had over the last handful of years. We can get this to you.
So how are projects determined? And these are the projects that you see in your big binder over the 10-year period. Well, first of all, overall comprehensive asset management strategy.
We have our asset management plan, which then led into how our asset management system, the enterprise asset management system, I'm talking about where all the assets are noted, their replacement costs are kept, the criticality of the facility or asset is kept, and what the likelihood of that asset, possibly failing at any certain time, what that is, and then expected useful life. We take that on account every year. We do a comprehensive update, but during the year, we also update it as our operators and maintenance staff do work orders to do corrective maintenance, and they find the replacement or the fixed costs. They all keep that in track, and we keep track of the trends to see when assets will be needing replaced, either individually or as part of the system. Also, upcoming regulatory changes can affect when projects need to come about. So we take all that information, and we have done a number of analysis with consultants that come up with these master plans that help us to determine what the projects are, when they need to be implemented, and what their budgets will be. So you can see just a list here, the ones I could fit on the screen, that probably represent about 95% of the projects. There's a couple others, but you can see the first one for the water master plan, water well rehabilitation, and also possibly new wells master plan. The middle one with our water assets, mechanical assets, ESTs, almost AC water line replacement projects. Part of the water line evaluation renewal project, new EST, new water reclamation facility, and optimization of the collection system to get rid of those 5 lift stations and build that new trunk sewer line. You probably heard about that in the past, but we'll go over that a little bit more here in a second. So the first large project that we'll be starting in soon, like I said, these projects are ones that are ongoing or about to start in 2025. Just to prove the excess funds will fund the AC water line condition-based assessment. And this assessments include all this analysis, all this in-field testing, whether it be destructive on the pipe itself, whether it be using equipment to test the pipe, to analyze the thickness of the pipe and so forth, and other factors, which will then lead to a prioritization of the water lines that need to be replaced, when they need to be replaced, and what the costs will be for when they need to be replaced. Overall budget for that is $1.6 million, and it's expected to be done in July of 2025. Like I mentioned before, the wastewater conveyance optimization project, we will eliminate these 5 lift stations, build a large trunk gravity main to the new water reclamation facility. Overall, the analysis has been done to see what the effect of keeping these lift stations in service would be into the future, and that a 35-year renewal savings by doing this project is probably $30 million, plus ongoing O&M costs. We're seeing each day. All these lift stations are 40, 50 years old, and again, production O&M costs and potential noise and odor costs.
And what would be the cost of replacing? Now that we've seen that.
I think we're in the process of working through that.
What's that?
We're working through that. We're in the second phase.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't you say also that would lead to an improvement in reliability because you don't have to worry about them breaking down?
Yes, sir.
Want to add another bullet point for next time?
Yes, sir. Yes, that's right. And we have not only the lift stations with existing force mains. One from lift station 5 has already had some failures, which we've had to replace sections of pipe, so that is addressing that as well. Elevated storage tank number 6, which is the project that's already been discussed, approved, going forward. So it's preliminary design phase. We are under temporary variance from TCQ because we are under the required capacity for elevated storage in the Woodlands, but they gave us a variance for the time being. However, because of increased demand in the future, we will no longer be able to get that variance. Also, in addition to that, adding another EST allows for each water plant service area to act independently, to isolate them without worrying about elevated storage and need for storage for fire flows and high demands. Also, if you have another elevated storage tank nearby that you have to take out service for maintenance, you don't have to worry about those fire flow needs not being met if you have this additional tank for additional storage.
That whole project is 5 million.
It's $11.5 million. There's part of it that will be funded from the R&R fund, and then part of it will be funded from what we call capacity funds that we have on hand. Get more into detail on that, but that's how that's being funded. Those aren't new funds, those are on hand.
And you basically adding an additional tank on the side.
Yes, sir.
And when you say from growth, where's that growth coming from?
Well, there have been, I think Mud 39's had some additional areas, and then the potential, development maybe further to the west, but we've been based upon the 6th and final counting, that's largely where that's coming from.
So it's in the 6th and final county?
Yes, sir.
Is it one of those projects approved in the 6th and final county?
I don't
We'll have to check that.
check on that, yeah.
It was early on. This was a project that was originally like slated to be designed in like the mid 2000-ish range, and then was tabled because the growth wasn't happening at the pace that was expected. And so, but now that it's necessary, so it's come back around. So David, we can check that.
Next project, which has also been underway, previously approved, and it's in its final design phase of the rehabilitation of this South Shore Gravity Main well, we're calling South Shore Gravity Main. It's actually several different mains. They primarily all tie into Lift Station 5, which is where that optimization project will ultimately tie in to get to the new water reclamation facility. But you can see from just an example of the CCTV that was taken a few years back, what kind of condition that we're seeing in that sewer line. So if we don't address it, very soon, it'll be deteriorating further and putting us at risk of possible failure of that line. But it's about 6,600 linear feet of a 42-inch and 36-inch ductile iron pipe sewer line.
And when was that put in?
I think it was around late 90s or mid 90s, maybe.
And you're requesting funding for this in what year?
Well, it's already actually been primarily funded. And then we're going to, it's already been approved. We're going into the construction after that. Yeah, that's right.
And when the, okay, never mind. Okay.
Wastewater facility number 2, tertiary filter improvements. This is a project to replace the sand, what's called sand filters in 2 of the 3 basins that are at wastewater plant 2. Currently, we have to have all 3 basins in service to handle our peak flow, our permitted peak flow. If we were to have one out of service for maintenance, so we get a storm, we would probably have to go around the filter with some of the effluent. So doing this project would allow us to have the flexibility to take the filter out of service as needed for some maintenance in the future, because these cloth media filters have basically 3 times the capacity per filter that a sand filter like is existing has. But that does not change the overall permit capacity of this facility. Lift station number 1, gravity main bypass and decommissioning. Again, this is kind of tied into that South Shore line, so continuing upstream, but this is a project to ultimately decommission lift station 1, which is our oldest lift station in the Woodlands. And also the fact that our force main from that lift station is heavily deteriorated. It's heavily corroded. We're worried about it failing, in the near future. So what this project will do is actually add a gravity main, which doesn't require a lift station, going to the 42-inch line to the west, where it's existing. The force main goes under Woodlands Parkway, and that would be a big effort just to replace it under Woodlands Parkway, let alone the full length of that force main. So cost estimate of the force main replacement about $2 million. And additional future renewal you need on the lift station, possibly $900,000. By doing this gravity main, you only talking about $1.5 million. So you can see the savings right there, and you're removing any future O&M costs too. Water plant generators. It's another project that's under design and previously approved, previously funded. Just replacing auxiliary engines that have, in a power outage, have to be manually started by someone coming to the facility after it's been noted that a power outage has occurred, starting them up and getting pump and wells back in operation. By having a generator instead, you have the instantaneous startup of those facilities. You also have more flexibility because you can switch around to whichever equipment you need to have the backup power for instead of the stationary engines, which are dedicated to that one piece of equipment. Yes, sir.
If you're going to do away with the lift stations, what happens to those generators?
Well, lift station one does not have a generator at currently. Like this one's the water plants where we have.
I know, what are you gonna do with those generators? Do we have at the lift stations?
Well, if we do have, if possibly we have a generator at one of those lift stations, we'd find another lift station that does not currently have one, and we could put it at the facilities.
You list the 450 kilowatt generator at water plant one.
Yes, sir.
How does
So,
that fit in with the larger project? You're doing this now and then,
The water plant
Well-
versus lift station one. So
right.
the water plant
this
is,
is what am I missing? Sorry.
WP is water plant,
so water plant is like a well and a ground storage tank. The lift station is
water
sanitary.
supply. Yeah,
Right. So,
right. Sorry about that, yeah. But at water plant 2 and 3, we'll be installing each of those a 1 megawatt generator, and at water plant 1 will be a 450 kilowatt generator. Just because the power requirements of water plant 1 aren't as great. Water well rehabilitation projects. So this is part of a master plan. This is not one specific project that I'm talking about here, but a series of projects over the 10-year period. As we had that master plan done, because a lot of these wells have been in service for, installed 30, 40 years ago. The equipment in them's been in there 10, 15 years possibly. So, by having this program, you're making sure that the water well equipment is properly maintained, replaced as needed. So because of the fact that we have to have this groundwater, since surface water is considered supplementary, and there could be disruptions from the surface water system. There's also some projects in here that talk about lowering the pump down further into the hole. We did modeling analysis using the future condition DFCs, the desired future conditions set forth by the GMA, for acre feet per year, and trending the aquifer so that we could keep up with it for a 10 and 20-year period after we lower the well. So that's why we're lowering some of these wells as we're rehabilitating, knocking two things out at one time.
Have there's been a slowing of the well dropping because of the use of surface water?
Well, from the trends I've seen, it did more initially when we had a higher percentage of surface water, but then after we kind of leveled out, it's still starting to decline a little bit each year. So,
If you look at the footprint of these wells in relation to the communities surrounding the woodlands, all the ones on the outskirts of the community that are more impacted by another geographic area using entirely well water, we see a trend in that versus.
I don't know the answer to that question right offhand. I'd have to look at the contour map for the subsidence. So but I would tend to think that's probably the case. Yes.
not sure we've looked at it, David.
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't think we've looked at it that way, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. That's up.
I mean, the reason I ask that is we've had other communities outside the woodlands, ask for permission to join the by turning them down, they went ahead and drilled more wells instead of taking surface water out. So that's why my previous question about, surrounding the woodlands, everybody's dropping wells everywhere. We've had communities or mutts come to us and ask for, or come to you guys and ask for, ask to join the GRP, and they were declined. So we at half capacity and we're declining and we're dropping wellheads. So I'm just trying to understand the impact of that decision.
Separate,
Yeah,
separate
I can't address
conversation,
that.
right?
And then the last one, we talked about the bit, the one y'all are, all aware of, the water reclamation facility. We've already gone through strategic plan phases 1 and 2, which is kind of preliminary studies, looking at the options and things of that nature. Then going into phase 3, which would be for design, preliminary and final design. You need approval from the MUDs to move forward with that. As noted before, it does not meet PCQ designer criteria, but the land acquisition process is currently underway. So with that, I will turn it over to Connie to add a little bit more detail about that.
Yeah, so up to this point, Aaron's really been highlighting the 10-year project plan, and that's really the spiral bound packet. If you've got questions on specifics and things like that, they're in that spiral bound. We're going to get to some numbers here in a second, but we're going to take kind of a side step. So I'm going to step in for a second here. With the schedule of the water reclamation facility, really from the funding perspective, we wanted to make sure that we were presenting the schedule that we've had right now. So if you're talking about April through the fall of 2030, that's the current schedule. So there's a supplemental agreement that was presented in January. And so the assumption would be that we were trying to get that passed in April. There has been some discussion that it could get delayed until like a December 2025 timeframe. If that happens, so it goes to a November, potentially rollback tax election in November of 2025, that pushes construction completion out to the summer of 2032. So the difference between these two schedules, you have it in front of you, but when you flip between the two is really the start date. Is what they're called now instead of a wastewater treatment plant or a wastewater treatment facility. That is the industry nomenclature for it.
Can you explain, you made a comment about the tax rollback.
There are conversations, and what I'll say is we understand y'all as the MUDs are trying to figure out how to pay for some of this infrastructure. And so there's a potential that there could be a delay in things getting approved back to the SGRA. And so we're just trying to highlight what potentially could happen with a delay, because there's once again, it's not a do nothing option for us. We have to do some things. There's infrastructure that needs to be replaced. And so the next slide here, we tried to really identify with the water reclamation facility, the impacts of if you're postponing by some time. So if the construction is complete after 2030, the column on the left highlights a good number of projects there that really we've shelved for now because we feel like it's going to get replaced with the treatment facility or the water reclamation facility. We're using the correct nomenclature there. Apologies for that. If it continues to push beyond the 2030 and then ends up after 2033, there are even more projects that could add to the list. And so these are projects that really there could be a completely parallel 10-year project plan if things began to push. And so we just want for y'all to understand that these are projects that either once upon a time were on the 10-year project plan and got pulled, and then we are putting them off to the side, waiting for that treatment facility to be built. If it doesn't happen by, once again, the time frame that's in the first schedule by the fall of 2030, there will be implications and there will be infrastructure that either from a maintenance perspective or some bigger projects that could be triggered and need to be replaced, even though we'd be moving forward with the water reclamation facility full replacement. So we still have to run the plant. We can't do nothing just and let it wait another 18 months. There are things that will trigger if we continue to have to wait.
If you go back to the previous slide, again, I'm not a civil engineer. But if you begin to go down that list and you look at blowers and generators and control centers, those are all electrical mechanical components that have never had a 50-year life. Right? They have a 10-year, 7 or 8-year life. So if we were just, doing R&R, we would be replacing them. Probably you replacing the identical type units in wastewater WRF number 2. So then,
yeah, I mean, the purpose of this list is just to let y'all know there are other things that are
have R&R that will continue.
Yeah, it will continue,
regardless
right?
of the decision here.
Right. And so that's really my sidebar right here is just to kind of make that point, make sure that it's clear. as y'all are making some decisions in your MUDs, this will be in each MUD presentation as well. So just know that it's there. We can have further discussion. So yes, Mr. Gannon.
So will any of these projects that you've listed here
Yes, sir.
cause a circumstance where the current facility would indeed meet the TCQ design criteria
No, sir.
as was noted earlier?
No.
So nothing.
No,
So this
we
is
would,
just
we would
keeping
have to
things
do
going.
a significant amount of what's on this list to make that happen.
Okay.
But the plant today meets
It does not
it
actually.
does not. So is that in writing?
I believe it is, yes.
You believe it is?
I think it's in that phrasing that was.
So we can get that document.
I think you have it.
I have it?
Yes, sir.
So Connie, I appreciate this perspective. I think for myself and maybe other directors, having some kind of time associated and dollars associated with these things is really important. I have no way of assessing this trade-off, which is what you're kind of saying, is it?
I understand. It takes a significant amount of effort to create that. We are working, so hold on here. We're working to try to put some numbers to some of this, but we have many of these come from previous assessments that were done, but it was an assessment that gave us a cost in 2018, 2019, 2020. And we really would need to go back on some of these items and talk to vendors and get updated costs. And there's a lot of effort that goes into putting prices to all of this. So we put this together just to help the MUDs understand that there's not a do nothing option. Things will continue to happen. And we can continue to develop this list, but honestly, our preference at this point is to continue to move forward with the design, starting here in the middle of 2024. That's what we're really asking for. We're not asking for the funding for the whole kit and caboodle. We're really just asking for the funding for design. And that's kind of where we are on that. So
I have a
yes,
quick
sir.
question, comment, based on Hugh's comment. I agree. And I'm wondering, without going out and getting bids on some of these
that we don't spend a significant amount of time pulling together. And that number gets out there and that number changes. What we've experienced so far is that whatever the number is becomes some sort of golden number that we can't back down from. It makes me very nervous with the way that the market is right now on electrical components and pump components that continue to go up and escalate in cost, that we would be placing a cost on this if we're moving too quickly. And there's a lot of these projects that we would actually bring in experts to help us price and maybe pay them $5,000 or $10,000 to help us make sure that we've got the cost
So
correct.
approach it differently. And so
Right.
if it's going to cost 300 million to just totally put in a new plant, let's say hypothetically, and to do all this other stuff to keep it going for the next 10 years or until the new one's online, it would be half that. You can just throw some, or whatever the number, whatever the percentage is, can you figure out some way to do it where you don't take?
We can try to ballpark, like the left column, let's say 10 million, the right column, 70 million, I don't know, something like that. My question to you all is, can you all help us make sure it's educated that those are numbers that we don't have really clear OPCCs, right?
Assume the answer is no. That's why you need to put the information out that you can live with.
Right, and that's that's the challenge, right? So we are working on trying to pull some things together, but it won't be in the next 2 weeks. I can commit to that.
It's an observation. So, I've been in industrial firms. And so what we're asking for would be the normal expectation if you come and ask for $300 million capital. That's a big number for a lot of corporations, $300 million. And you spent 2 million and you had a bid to spend 4 million, I understand, and you cut that. And that the first step of that process should have been to generate, the current state and what we call.
But we did, David. That is phase
I have been
one.
asking and I have.
That is what the phase one report documents. And then the phase two is moving to when the MUDs gave us direction to focus on the MDR. So phase one documents what would be required to be fixed and phased in.
I'm, if you could send them to the, the G folder, I would love to look at that detail, but so far I have not seen any of those documents and we've asked for them.
I believe we've provided them multiple times and even in most recently, a very specific folder on the Google Drive, correct, Eric? So we can send them again.
If you send me the link, I will
Right.
glad to begin to review it, but I've not
The
seen
phase-one
it.
study from Friesen Nichols should have that information that compares.
I've seen an executive summary, but
Right.
with no numbers.
The baseline option, I believe, is what you're looking for versus alternative 9, which was the ultimate one that was selected to move forward with.
Like I said before, in any business with this much capital at risk, your organization would be presenting the argument that
Which-
this is justified
Right.
with numbers.
And David, I'm gonna say it again, we did it. That was the very first step of this project with the stakeholders in the room. And we
Right.
worked through that and presented it, and a selection was made and we moved
And
forward.
again, I would have loved to watch those videos, but you didn't record it.
Can I just say that let's just say that's water under the bridge, okay?
Right.
And so now we're sitting here at the point of looking at funding options, the
Right.
mud zone, right? And Ed earlier said, if we delay this too much, we're gonna be pushing this,
Right.
the schedule. We get that. For every mud, we have to consider the cost trade-off of the delay that we would be incurring because we are pushing something off. We're doing that with eyes wide open. But it's really hard to understand what the impact of that delay is without having numbers. I think that's all that David's saying. That's what I'm saying.
I can give you a large ballpark number. It just makes me very uncomfortable with what some of the different folks are using against us.
Okay, fair enough. But I think we're gonna have to go with numbers to make decisions about numbers. We have to have some kind of basis for that. At least that's my view, right?
Okay.
So my observation would be to put some brackets around those numbers and with an explanation that this has not been, vetted to the nth degree. And it's a high level estimate,
Ranges.
ranges. I think the most important thing about left-hand column there is those are duplicative costs that would be wasted.
Right.
If you had to go ahead and build the full facility anyway.
Correct.
What you did it anyway, eventually. So
All of them
The
would
right
be.
side, the right side.
All of the projects would be duplicative effort that would be removed when the new facility came online.
but let's just talk about the left-hand column, because that's what I think most people have been talking about at this point. All of those things wouldn't be necessarily done where they are now in place. They might be done at a different location based upon a new plant facility concept.
Correct.
So they would be sunk costs, if you will.
It would be, correct.
Okay, I think that's an important message that everybody needs to get.
And maybe I don't get any of this, sorry. Can I back up just a little bit? I thought we were presenting here is that if we go on our current path and we can complete construction by 2030.
On this one right here. If we complete
one.
by fall of 2030,
You stay on your path, which was an April, May kind of funding.
none of these projects would necessarily be
None of
needed
these
unless
happen.
something failed in between that we just
Okay.
aren't expecting.
These are things that otherwise would have to be done after 2030.
So construction complete after 2030, but kind of before 2033 is the left column. So if you miss the window and you have to push it out, if it pushes out beyond 2033, then that triggers the right column unless something breaks.
Both columns.
Right, both columns together.
And I guess to Paul's point, if that happens and we finish in 2035, we will have done all that stuff.
Right.
And built a new plant,
And
and then all this stuff's gonna get bulldozed.
Correct.
Just to clarify something, if I'm looking at an industrial facility and, every year I make investments in an industrial facility. So what you're saying is that's really true of any industrial facility life cycle. Right? I mean, that's true, whether and again, I'll go back to, I've never seen that you tear down a functioning facility and build a mirror image next to it. And so when I look at you need a digestive blow or rebuild, well, I bet you rebuild those things all the time because they have a limited life. You know what I mean? I struggle with no numbers. I really do, that you want us to make a $300+ million decision, having not presented numbers and how these costs are broken out.
The nice thing about bonds is they don't go out and sell $300 million worth of bonds. They do small amount and then they say, what's the next step? What's the next step? Okay. And we have no crystal ball to say what bond prices are going to be. That's why they're going to break it into small pieces.
Once we make this commitment, we're down that road. Right? They're talking about tearing out a facility and replacing it. So whether they have small bites or big bites, it's almost irrelevant. We've taken a path that requires us to basically take apart this facility.
That's the proposal they have before us.
Didn't we have a committee?
Bonds and interest rates.
Didn't we have a committee that took in all this information, spent weeks and months and multiple meetings and vote and say, SGRA, this is what we want you to do? Isn't that what they're trying to do, is fulfill what this group of people gave them as direction? I mean,
We did that over the first year of the phase one. That's what we did. And we vetted those two options, and the option that was selected due to various and sundry reasons that are well documented in that phase one report.
Dan, how many people were involved in that process?
We had one representative from each mud.
Right.
And they were the voting.
Plus more, right?
members. And then we had essentially non-voting stakeholder members with Woodlands Water, the township, Howard Hughes.
20 people?
Commerce.
20 people, and then
Yeah.
how many meetings did you guys have if you were researching these two different alternatives?
I think we had like 6 or 7.
Over what period of time?
Stakeholder meetings over the course of a little bit over a year.
Okay, so are we gonna start over? Or are we gonna move forward?
Well, I'll just say this. So we have an election cycle, right? And, when I got elected, I was not allowed to attend those meetings. They could have been filmed, right? And we could have those films to renew. I mean, obviously, you asked me, we had one representative per month to keep
So
away. from
every election
Bill-
cycle, we're gonna start over?
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
We may. But I'm just saying right now, I don't see, I'll just say this. I'm looking for the numbers so I can make it an informed decision. And so far, you're telling me it's too much risk taking the numbers out because they may be wrong. But we do that constantly in business.
I'm letting you know what the risk was and asking if y'all want us to take that risk, because we will, but that is the reason they are not up there yet. We're working on them, but they're not there yet.
See, I'm shocked that you don't have them already.
I don't see them as a risk. I just see them as information. I understand your concerns about them being held against you, but I can't imagine using that as a reason not to have the numbers. I just don't, I can't go there. Personally, I need to have I can't go to my constituents and we don't know what the trade-off is, but trust us, it's big.
Oh.
Right? That doesn't really resonate to talk to somebody about it and saying, if I can tell them it's either spend 20 now or 120 in 10 years, if those are the trade-offs, I can have that conversation. So I can't have some unknown numbers here and some unknown numbers.
Yeah, we're working on it. It was a discussion last week at the audit committee, so we are working on it. It's just something we need to spend the time to make sure it's vetted, so that when we put them out there, so we'll try to have them for the med meetings next week, but I can't promise it.
I mean, I don't think anybody in this room we all want, good quality water and sewer systems. Everybody wants it. It's just understanding the cost structure that's being presented.
Right, and we at SGRA are fully committed to partnering with you all. We feel like we started that 2 years ago, and we worked very hard to be inclusive, listen to the MUDs, try to inform, bring it back, make presentations at every single MUD meeting about what was happening in those stakeholder meetings. We have been as transparent as we think that we possibly could have been over the last year year and a half, 2 years with the information. Mr. Smith, we will make sure that you have that phase one study, not just the executive summary. And, you know, we're more than happy to talk through that with you if you still have questions. But with that, I am going to give it back to Aaron so that we can continue here on the 10-year project plan.
More or less summary.
Right, so here's the
Recap.
fiscal stuff he's getting into.
So these are a recap of the funding for projects that are already ongoing. And we continue in the 2025 or starting in 2025. Top is the R&R funded projects. Also, we have 2017 bonds, which have already been, you know, on hand, already part of our budget. But we did have remaining bonds. These are Texas Water Development Board bonds. And so we're going to utilize those bond funds to fund these projects that you see at the bottom. The new bonds is part of what we were talking about earlier with the water reclamation facility, the water line replacements, and so forth and so on. These are the summaries for that over the 10-year period for a water and wastewater system. And then in summary, so recap, with the R&R funded projects, those projects will be funded by those on-hand bonds, 2017, and then the new bonds, total 10-year project plan, a little over $700 million. That is the end of the presentation, and if you have additional questions, that's for me, get forward up to Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schindewolf.
Good job. Very thorough. Okay.
Could this be put on the Google Drive, these documents somehow? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Send me a link.
Directly.
Yeah, I mean, Google Drive has a lot of stuff in it.
We are now to agenda item number 10. We received the attorney's report. Katie? Agenda item 11, receive the general manager's report. General Manager Peterson, please.
Things to note, they passed out a summary of some topics that were discussed at the recent Texas Water Conservation Association annual meeting. It occurred, I think, last week. Trustee Lux's, your representative that attends and is, I think you've been in the, on the board for about 7 or 8 years, 6 or 7 years. 6 years and 3 times. So attended last week. And so just a summary of some of the topics that were covered at that. Also wanted to give you an update on the Gulf Coast Water Conservation Association, Gulf Coast Water Conservation Symposium that was put on a couple weeks ago. Myself and several directors from various months attended. It was pretty well attended. Wanted to give you just a couple quick highlights of some topics that were discussed. AMI, the importance of AMI, which obviously we've already accomplished. Water harvesting as a water conservation technique, which is something that I've actually been looking at for the last year. Some drought contingency and water conservation efforts, direct potable water use that's occurring in El Paso was discussed. Some different communication techniques for water conservation. And then there was a presentation on land subsidence as well. So a lot of different topics were discussed over the course of the day. And it was a good event. And then last thing I had was on the agendas for next month, or excuse me, next week, will be the financial summary of the funding options for a lot of what we talked about tonight. Mentioned that we were going to do it in March, and we are working feverishly to try to get those numbers prepared for next week. Myself, financial advisor, and Brian are working together. Okay. So,
Thanks, sir. For questions, comments? Okay, we're now to agenda item 12. The Personnel Committee did not meet, so there is no report for that. The Audit and Finance Committee has previously, is there anything in addition to the
We met
excess funds
met
that you?
on the 6th and preliminary review of the 10-year plan, which you just saw. And many of the questions and discussions we had at the preliminary meeting And of course, the excess funds, which previously discussed. Thank you.
And then also the Public Education Committee, Trustee Gaynor.
Yes, we met today. We had a very energetic discussion about the more or less final strategic communications plan that Holloway Environmental put together. And a big part of the discussion was, believe it or not, around the logo. But it was an important discussion because you want to get at a glance what is being attempted to be achieved with renewable infrastructure in the wetlands. We're going to see that.
Hey, Neil, could you maybe explain a little bit why we need a logo and what the use is? I don't know that everyone here is tied into that. Just real quickly.
Well, the key is to convey in at a glance what the infrastructure renewal project or program is going to be. So it will act as an umbrella into which a website will be created around, and there'll be all of the necessary information, required information will be available for residents and anyone who has an interest to access. Now, we're not at a point where we're working on a schedule. Hopefully that schedule will dovetail with the schedules, plural, that you've seen today in an earlier presentation. But that's still a work in progress. But the intent is to ensure that we have a kind of a rallying logo, if you will, much as the Woodlands War logo is changed. You know exactly what it's about. So that in a nutshell.
What are we rallying to? It's like a rallying logo. So what's the rally?
Well, it's at a glance, if you can imagine a water droplet, a drop. That's what infrastructure renewal
Water.
is about. But we'll incorporate elements of the branding of both Woodlands Water and SJRA because it's a joint effort.
The overall intention is to educate the public on the things that are aging and the importance to address those things as they age. Whatever they are, whatever they happen. Right now, two of the bigger items are the treatment plant and FEC. But over time, there will be other things. Over time, there may be opportunities to partner with the township, perhaps the county, in identifying in aging infrastructure in the woodlands specifically. This would be a landing spot for the community to go to learn and educate themselves on what's going on, what's getting old, what we're looking at, what are the issues, those sorts of things. So
There's also a bit of getting feedback from the community. Like,
absolutely.
what are you aware of how things are? Are you happy with your service? Are you okay with, spending more money or having your costs go up? It's a give and take. I mean, that's my point, is we're going to be on transmit and receive when we do this, right?
I mean, in a tentative sense, computer surveys such as you are describing, you will be starting in the April timeframe. So
there's workshops
it's
and
imminent. Yeah,
live
there's
events as well.
But I don't want to get ahead of Holloway because I want to make sure that the timetables are synchronized. But as Eric came up today, the logo will have just a short few words: water, renewal, the woodlands. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Did you look at the logo that we paid for back in 1986 when we hired a consultant to give us a logo and do our newsletter?
No, I can't claim.
Okay.
I went back that far in history.
Okay. I just, wondered if we're reinventing the wheel.
Oh, I don't think this is going to be wheel reinvention. There's only so much roundness you can have.
I could we discuss, you left the committee?
What now?
It was announced last week you left the committee, some regional committee. You.
Oh, yeah. The,
Flood planning.
Yeah, flood planning, and then there was another lady who was nominated. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, was that the last?
yeah.
Last meeting,
when
Yeah,
Imelda was,
yeah, I've got some other issues I'm dealing with. So I want to, let that be open for someone else. The person that I've had a conversation with is a registered engineer with extensive experience in flood mitigation and project management, and knows basically from the bottom to the top on how flood mitigation works. So when it comes to the selection of projects and perhaps dealing with some of the challenges of generating a state plan, not the local regional plan, what gets included, what gets left off. So there's a set of arguments. If you want to have an experienced registered engineer carry the ball for you. Okay. Well, that in a nutshell is the story.
And did she gain a seat?
Interview and then make their selection, and that's the process. The upcoming April meeting of the Central Regional Flood Planning Group.
And I can update, I'm sure in my report that the endorsement that the trustees recommended that we do was made. So official endorsement was made, as you instructed us to do. The last meeting.
Anything else? Any other questions?
need to adjourn, recess. Okay, so then we can go right to agenda item 15. Discuss matters for placement on future agendas. Anyone? Hearing none?
Oh, no, I have.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
After many years of the emergency reserve policy lying dormant and getting a thorough scrubbing tonight, at least questioning, I would like to suggest that we add, but not an emergency time frame on it, because I know there's a lot of other more important things going on right now, but within 90 days, as it may be appropriate to have a policy review of the emergency reserve, starting with why do we have it, what's it for, how much, right down the line, and let's just go back to zero and review that again.
100% with you. And Connie, question or what is your budget cycle for this year? How does it look in terms of the suggested 90-day review period?
I believe that we adopt at our board with SRA in August or
Okay.
September fiscal year starts, so that's up to,
We might need 60 days.
yeah, I think it needs to be more of a 60
Okay.
day look if you're trying to do that for this budget cycle.
Yeah, because like I was saying, sure,
Understood, yeah.
it has to be part of an annual.
Right.
And having that review, I think fall.
But we may want to change the policy. That's my point.
Yeah, gotcha.
Second item. We have a number of new directors and the potential to have a number of newer directors. And I think it's appropriate, certainly for me and hopefully all the other directors, to have another review of the D&O policy, the directors and officers liability policy, as to amount of coverages, how much legal defense is incorporated, all of those questions. I think those that have assets at risk are entitled to this information.
Anyone else? Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.